Hi everyone, Free Page here for xStarsAtNight. I'm excited to bring you the second part of my new series, Audio Enhanced, where I read books and add sound effects to them. I'm currently in the middle of reading the first chapter of Just Listen by Sarah Dessen. We left off with our narrator, Annabelle, getting ready to go back to high school after summer break. She had a falling out with her friend Sophie. That prompts her to go back in time to tell the story of how her and Sophie met at the pool when they were 12. Let's continue. So, my mother said one night at dinner, I heard a new family's moved to the old Daughtry's house over on Sycamore. The Daughtry's moved? My father asked. My mother nodded. Back in June. To Toledo? Remember? My father thought for a second. Right, he said, finally nodding. Toledo. I also heard, my mom continued, passing the bowl of pasta she was handing to Whitney, who immediately passed it on to me, that they have a daughter your age, Annabelle. I think I saw her the other day when I was over at Margie's. Really, I said. She nodded. She has dark hair, a bit taller than you. Maybe you've seen her around the neighborhood. I thought for a second. I don't know. That's who it is, Kirsten said suddenly. She put down her fork with a clank. The stalker from the pool. Oh my God, I knew she had to be way younger than us. Hold on. Now my father was paying attention. There's a stalker at the pool? I hope not, my mother said in her worried voice. She's not a stalker, really, Kirsten said. She's just this girl who's been hanging around us. It's so creepy. She sits beside us and follows us around and doesn't talk. And she's always listening to what we're saying. I told her to get lost, but she just ignores me. God, I can't believe she's only 12. That makes it even sicker. So dramatic, Whitney muttered, spearing a piece of lettuce with her fork. She was right, of course. Kirsten was our resident drama queen. Her emotions were always at full throttle, as well as her mouth. She never stopped talking, even if she was well aware you weren't listening. In contrast, Whitney was the silent type, which meant the few words she uttered always carried that much more meaning. Kirsten, my mother said, be nice. Mom, I've tried that, but if you saw her, you'd understand. It's strange. My mother took a sip of her wine. Moving to a new place is difficult, you know. Maybe she doesn't know how to make friends. She obviously doesn't, Kirsten told her, which means that it's your job to meet her halfway, my mother finished. She's 12, Kirsten said, as if this was on par with being diseased or on fire. So is your sister, my father pointed out. Kirsten picked up her fork and pointed it at him. Exactly, she said. Beside me, Whitney snorted. But my mom, of course, was already turning her attention on me. Well, Annabelle, she said, maybe you can make an effort if you do see her, to say hello or something. I didn't tell my mother I'd already met this new girl, mostly because she would have been horrified she'd been so rude to me. Not that this would have changed her expectations for my behavior. My mother was famously polite and expected the same of us, regardless of the circumstances. Our whole lives were supposed to be a high road. Okay, I said, maybe I will. Good girl, she said. And that, I hoped, was that. The next afternoon, though, when Clark and I got to the pool, Kirsten was already there, lying out with Molly on one side and the new girl on the other. I tried to ignore this as we got settled in our spot, but eventually I glanced over to see Kirsten watching me. When she got up a moment later, shooting me a look, then headed towards the snack bar, the new girl immediately following her. I knew what I had to do. I'll be back in a second, I told Clark, who was reading a Stephen King novel and blowing her nose. Okay, she said. I got up, then started around by the high dive, crossing my arms over my chest as I passed Chris Pennington. He was lying on a beach chair, a towel over his eyes, while a couple of his buddies wrestled on the pool deck. Now, instead of sneaking glances at him, while other than swimming and getting beaten at cards was my main activity at the pool that summer, I'd get bitched out again, all because my mother was insistent we be raised as the best of good Samaritans. Great. I could have told Kirsten about my previous run-in with this girl, but I knew better. Unlike me, she did not shy away from confrontation. If anything, she sped toward it, before overtaking it completely. She was a family powder keg, and I had lost track of the number of times I stood off to the side, cringing and blushing, while she made her various displeasures clear to salespeople, other drivers, or various ex-boyfriends. I loved her, but the truth was, she made me nervous. Whitney, in contrast, was a silent fumer. She'd never tell you when she was mad. You just know by the expression on her face. The steely narrowing of her eyes, the heavy, enunciated sighs that could be so belittling that words, any words, seemed preferable to them. When she and Kirsten fought, which, with 2 years between them, was fairly often, it always seemed at first like a one-sided argument, since all you could hear was Kirsten endlessly listing accusations and slights. Pay more attention, though, and you noticed Whitney's stony, heavy silences, as well as the rebuttals she offered. As few as they were, they always cut to the point much more harshly than Kirsten's swirling, whirly commentaries. One opened, one closed. It was no wonder that the first image that came to my mind when I thought of either of my sisters was a door. With Kirsten, it was the front one to our house, through which she always was coming in and out, usually in mid-sentence, a gaggle of friends trailing behind her. Whitney's was the one to her bedroom, which she preferred to keep shut between her and the rest of us, always. As for me, I fell somewhere between my sisters and their strong personalities, the very personification of the vast gray area that separated them. I was not bold and outspoken or silent and calculating. I had no idea how anyone would describe me or what would come to mind at the sound of my name. I was just Annabelle. My mother, conflict adverse herself, hated it when my sisters fought. "Why can't you just be nice?" she'd plead with them. They might have rolled their eyes, but a message sank in with me, that being nice was the ideal. The only place where people didn't get loud or so quiet they could scare you. If you could just be nice, then you wouldn't have to worry about arguments at all. But being nice wasn't as easy as it seemed, especially when the rest of the world could be so mean. By the time I got to the snack bar, Kirsten had disappeared, of course, but the girl was still there, waiting for the guy behind the counter to ring up her candy bar. Oh well, I thought as I walked up to her, here goes nothing. "Hi," I said. She just looked at me, her expression unreadable. I'm Annabelle. You just moved here, right?" She didn't say anything for what seemed like a really long while, during which time Kirsten walked out of the ladies' room behind her. She stopped when she saw us talking. I continued, now even more uncomfortable. I think we're in the same grade." The girl reached up, pushing her sunglasses further up her nose. "So," she said in that same sharp, snide voice as the first time she addressed me. "I just thought," I said, "that since you know we're the same age, you might want to hang out, or something." Another pause. Then the girl said, as if clarifying, "You want me to hang out with you?" She made it sound so ridiculous, I immediately began backtracking. "I mean, you don't have to," I told her. "It was just..." "No," she cut me off flatly. Then she tilted her head back and laughed. "No way." The thing is, if it had just been me there, that would have been it. I would have turned around, face flushed, and have gone back to Clark. Game over. But it wasn't just me. "Hold on," Kirsten said, her voice loud. "What did you just say?" The girl turned around. When she saw my sister, her eyes widened. "What?" she said, and I couldn't help but notice how different this was. The first word she'd ever said to me sounded as she said it now. "I said," Kirsten repeated, her own voice sharp. "What did you just say to her?" "Uh-oh," I thought. "Nothing," the girl replied. "That's my sister," Kirsten said, pointing at me. "And you were just a total bitch to her." By this point, I had already been cringing and blushing. Kirsten, however, put her hand on her hip, which meant she was getting started. "I wasn't a bitch," the girl said, taking off her glasses. "You were, and you know it," Kirsten said, cutting her off. "So you can't stop denying it. And stop following me around too, okay? You're creeping me out. Come on, Annabelle." I was frozen to the spot, just looking at the girl's face. Without her sunglasses, her expression stricken, she suddenly looked 12, just staring at us as Kirsten grabbed my wrist, tugging me back to where she and her friends were sitting. "Unbelievable," she kept saying as I looked across the pool. I could see Clark watching me, confused, as Kirsten pulled me down onto the chair. Molly sat up, blinking, reaching up to catch the untied straps of her bikini. "What happened?" she asked, and as Kirsten began to tell her, I glanced back towards the snack bar, but the girl was gone. Then I saw her, through the fence behind me, walking across the parking lot, barefoot, her face tucked down. She left all her stuff on the chair beside me, a towel, her shoes, a bag with a magazine and billfold, a pink hairbrush. I kept waiting for her to realize this and turn back for it. She didn't. Her things stayed there all afternoon. After I'd gone back to sit with Clark and told her everything. After we played several hands of rummy and swam until our fingers were pruny. After Kirsten and Molly left, and the other people took their chairs. All the way up until the lifeguard finally blew the whistle announcing closing time. And Clark and I packed up and walked around the edge of the pool, sunburned and hungry and ready to go home. I knew this girl was not my problem. She'd been mean to me twice, and therefore was not deserving of my pity or help. But as we passed the chair, Clark stopped. "We can't just leave it," she said, bending over to gather up the shoes and stuff them in the bag. "And it's on my way home." I could have argued the point, but then I thought again of her walking across the parking lot, barefoot, alone. So I pulled the towel off the chair, folding it over my own. "Yeah," I said, "okay." So when we got to the Daughtry's old house, I was relieved to see all the windows were dark and there was no car in the driveway, so we could just leave the girl's stuff and be done with it. But as Clark bent down to stick the bag against the front door, it opened, and there she was. She had on cut-off shorts and a red t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, no sunglasses, no high-heeled sandals. When she saw us, her face flushed. "Hi," Clark said after a just long enough to be noticed awkward silence. Then she sneezed before adding, "We brought you your stuff." The girl just looked at her for a second as if she didn't understand what she was saying, with which Clark's congestion she probably didn't. I leaned over and picked up the bag, holding it out to her. "You left this," I said. She looked at the bag, then up at me, her expression guarded. "Oh," she said, reaching for it. "Thanks." Behind us, a bunch of kids coasted past on their bikes, their voices loud as they called out to one another. Then it was quiet again. "Honey?" I heard a voice call from the end of the dark hallway behind her. "Is someone there?" "It's okay," she said over her shoulder. Then she stepped forward, shutting the door behind her, and came out onto the porch. She quickly moved past us, but not before I saw her eyes were red and swollen. She'd been crying. And suddenly, like so many other times, I heard my mother's voice in my head. "Moving to a new place is tough. Maybe she doesn't know how to make friends." "Look," I said, "about what happened, my sister—" "It's fine," she said, cutting me off. "I'm fine." But as she said it, her voice cracked, just slightly, and she turned her back to us, putting her hand to her mouth. I just stood there, totally unsure what to do. But as I looked at Clark, I knew she was already digging into the pocket of her shorts to pull out her ever-present pack of Kleenex. She drew one out, then reached around the girl, offering it to her. A second later, the girl took it, silently, and pressed it to her face. "I'm Clark," Clark said, "and this is Annabelle." In the years to come, it would be this moment that I always came back to me. Me and Clark, in the summer after our 6th grade year, standing there behind the girl's turned back. So much might have been different for me, for all of us, if something else had happened right then. At the time, though, it was like so many other moments, fleeting and unimportant, as she turned around, now not crying, surprisingly composed, actually, to face us. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sophie." Okay, so that's Audio Enhanced. I hope you enjoyed both of the parts. I enjoyed making them for you. And remember, if you like this book, you can find where to buy it in the description below. You can also find links to my social media. Please like and subscribe my channel, as well as put a comment on this video. Thank you for all your support. I love you all, and see you in the next video.